All right, I'm just gonna say it, this game absolutely slaps. Windrose has been out this week. It's only been out for a couple of days at the time of recording, and it has already been off to an amazing launch. It has hit a lot of the positives that this game was aiming to hit. It is doing very well. And let me tell you, playing a pirate survival game is just, that's exactly what we needed. But let me take a step back and give you the full Working Dad's review of Windrose. Make sure that you like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Working Dad content. If you don't, then you gotta sit through an entire hour of Blippi commercial free. You've been warned. Okay, so Windrose is exactly as I have described it. It is an open world pirate survival crafting game that puts you right in the mix of an entire pirate war that's going on, and it's fantastic. You, of course, are the main character, and you are guided through a story of revenge and trying to stop Blackbeard, the pirate, and his hooligans from causing an entire pirate extinction event. You can't have that in your pirate survival game. This game has many different elements that it does very, very well, but one of the best elements of this is its sense of adventure. You know, going through and exploring some of the islands that you come across, seeing islands in the distance, seeing other pirate ships out there, it really creates a sense of a breathing world, and it's actually just a lot of fun. It is really, really good. Now, the game does have its main story, which will guide you through the majority of your own exploration. And from what I've seen, a lot of the major elements of your progression is locked kind of behind the story. So you have to do the story to get to the other aspects of the game. But what really makes this fun is as you are out doing all these different adventures, you are constantly under the threat of attack from other pirates, from boars, from undead creatures. Like, there's so many threats that are out there as you were just trying to live. It's so good. Something else that this game does really well is the sense of atmosphere. Like, as I'm going through the pirate adventure here in the Caribbean, I actually feel like I'm a part of it, which is something that I really enjoyed, and is one reason that I keep wanting to come back. Between that and possibly my favorite part, which is the sea shanties, you get to sing sea shanties with your crew as you're out there sailing. Listen to this.
Yay, boys! Way up she rises, way up she rises, way up she rises, early in the morning. What will we do? The sailor, what will we do?
Oh my God. It's like my favorite thing. I made a YouTube short about it because it's something I love. It hits the right element of the world being a constant threat, but you and your crew are raging against the storm, so to speak, and it's done so well. So the main gameplay loop has you going through, exploring ruins, exploring abandoned camps or active camps, and fighting off pirates and completing quests. Now, you don't gain experience just by going and killing so many mobs. That doesn't grant you really any XP at all. You have to fully explore the certain areas, the certain discoverable areas, as well as just completing the quests in that area, and that gains you the experience which gets you your levels. Now, when you level, you get one of two things, or sometimes both, which are both stat points and talent points. When you have stat points, they increase a number of different things. Now, one of the things that I really liked about it is that a lot of the stat points that you choose, specifically the main three that are oriented around your weapon choices, they scale like Elden Ring, where if you have a certain amount of agility, that's going to increase greatly the amount of damage that you do with a sword or a two-handed sword. Or if you have a lot of strength, it's going to really help out with crude damage weapons, so like clubs, maces, a halberd, things like that, where it's almost oriented around you choosing what kind of build that you want to do. Now, the build that I went with was a two-handed greatsword pirate, and he's agile and he dodges and slices. I thought that that would work. That's something that I've greatly enjoyed my time thus far. Of course, just like many other survival games nowadays, you do get your little Breath of the Wild circle of stamina that can only be used for a certain amount of time, and basically if you run out of stamina, it takes a moment for it to regenerate back. It's very, very quick if you don't let it get it full energy out. But if you do get fully depleted on your stamina, you're a sitting duck. Truth be told, the game is very brutal when you don't have any stamina or your stamina does not regenerate quickly. it leaves you in a very vulnerable position, and in this game you can die very quickly. And that's mainly done through the combat. The combat in this game is very kind of unforgiving as you are learning. Now, the way that it goes is that essentially you are only 2 hits away from death. Starting out, it's a survival game, you gotta almost be ready to die at a moment's notice. But the way that the combat flows is the difference between attacks, blocks, and parries, and also break bar. So looking at blocks simply just block the attack, and you can only do so many blocks before your guard gets broken, and then when your guard gets broken, you're stunned for a little bit. Now, if you time your blocks appropriately as the enemy is swinging, it will parry the attack instead. And when the attack is parried, it breaks part of their break bar, until a point where if you parry enough attacks, they'll be completely stunned and open for an entire weapon attack chain, and you can basically kill any. Now, I've found that if you play that just right, because this is very similar to Enshrouded, and I have a decent amount of experience in there, is that if you time the parries right, you can basically fend off every attack easily and break their bar and then get your attacks in and then move back and then just keep doing that cycle back and forth. Now, it was a learning curve, so to speak, because I got spawn camped by a boar within my first hour of gameplay. So you have to understand that once you understand the flow of what enemy attacks do and how they move through their combat strokes, once you figure that out, you can understand it and it becomes noticeably easier and more controlled, especially when you play the game right. You play the combat the way that it was designed. Now, I do want to touch a little bit on base building. Base building is, of course, a very valid part of this game, and it's not something that I've spent too much time doing quite yet. I haven't gotten into it, let me put it that way. However, I do anticipate at some point I will spend more time and build a larger base and all that. But for me, this game gets a huge amount of credit immediately, because when you are building a base and you're looking at all the different materials, they have pre-built structures that you can just click, and then there you go. And then you have a base. You have it's crude structures. It's nothing fancy, but I also don't need anything fancy. I love that. That was something working dad, you just probably saved me about 15-20 minutes of farting around. Bam, done. Oh, so nice. Now, once you get through the main couple of chapters of the story and then you unlock your boat, you start getting introduced to other factions that are here. Now, these factions, and I won't really spoil anything, they kind of dictate the different combat of the different waters that you'll be in. They all are basically against Blackbeard in that sense, but you find that they have certain things that they are looking at that's going to improve your reputation with them. As you get more reputation, they sell better things to you. They'll be there more as a compatriot, it seems like. So that's cool to keep in mind. But now I get to talk about one of the best aspects of the game, which is the sailing. All right, so what makes this game stand out for me, and let me just put it this way, is the naval exploration and the naval combat and all that really just is the absolute cherry on top. Don't get me wrong, playing as a pirate, melee combat, I'm in there fighting against enemies. I have a musket that I'm striking enemies at a distance and then pulling out my sword and dealing with them. I'm really getting that good vibe. Being on the water, and this game has its water physics is incredible. As you were out there sailing, you were going up and down with the waves. You are essentially riding the current. There is airstreams. I don't think that they really affect the speed of the boat. Like if the wind is blowing northwest, which is something that I think that they will add eventually. But if there's the wind is blowing northwest and you're going northwest, you're going to move a little bit faster as compared to going into the wind. But I will say that overall, it is just such a good feeling to be out there sailing on the water, doing all of this. And then, of course, you press B down in the bottom right, and you get to sing sea shanties while you're doing it. I know that sounds very trivial. It's like, Calf Dad, why are you so excited about that? I love that aspect. That was just, that spoke to me on a level. All right, so while you're out on the ocean, you will run into enemy ships, and it's mainly Blackbeard that you're going to run into. And initially, I'm sure that there's more enemies as you get into the higher levels and the more dangerous waters. But starting out, you're going to run into a lot of Blackbeard ships, and the naval combat in this game is intense because, again, it's a learning curve. You're learning something new, but you're almost always outnumbered. In almost every naval fight that you will be in, it will be like 1-3 or 1-2 or 1-4 or 5. Like, I've seen large groups of ships all going and moving on at their own pace. Now, something that I think you'll be able to do, and I didn't explore this, but I do think that you can do, is that at like 20%, you can disable an enemy ship and then board their boat. The idea of the naval combat being very aggressive and toe-to-toe is 100% true. As you were out there fighting, as you were out there exploring on the open waters, going to different islands, you were under constant threat of naval action, and I love it. You'll be sailing along, and then on the horizon, you see a bunch of Blackbeard boats, and it's like, oh boy, you know, we're getting ready to throw hands, or, oh crap, I gotta avoid them completely. It's such a great feeling. I love it. It's something that I very much enjoyed in my short time here. But I will say it's also very dangerous in these combat situations, because there's only so many times that you'll probably be able to patch your ship up while you're in combat. Otherwise, you'll have to disengage, go back to where your base is, where you built a wharf, repair your boat, and then head back out there. Now, it seems like the enemies don't really repair their boats. There was a time where I was able to leave and then come back like a half hour later, and the enemies were at the same health that I left them. So that's good to know that you can kind of dip in and out. I'm guessing in one individual session. But it's something important to know that you are very vulnerable while you're on the water, but it's a lot of fun. Now, the other side of that, of course, is that you're using your boat mainly as exploration. You get to sing sea shanties and then ride across the waves as you go across to different islands. Now, there is something to be said about how slow that can be, because one of the earlier quests has you go basically from your main island all the way to Tortuga to basically be able to unlock that point as a fast travel. Now, there is fast travel in the game. However, you have to carry around a bell, and you have to set down the bell near the water so that you can teleport to those specific places very quickly. But it is very important that you carry that around, because if you go to an island and you engage in an enemy and then you die, you have to sail all the way back to where that was, get your cash, and then continue on what you were doing. So I recommend, especially as you're exploring new islands, that you just go out and place a bell very quickly, just so that you have a point that you can jump back and forth if you die. I made that mistake a number of times. Otherwise, sailing on the ocean is great. And as mentioned, to get to some of the quest points so that you can follow along and gain experience and do all that, they are a distance away. So you might very well be sailing for 5-10 minutes as you are going through, which doesn't necessarily help if you only have like 30 minutes to actually sit down and game, a day. That could be eating into it, and it really does slow the tempo down in that regard. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about how it affects you as a busy parent. So as you may have already garnered, this game is very good if you were a working parent. If you're a busy parent, it does a lot of things right. You can have your own private world. You can have your fast travel points. You can essentially have your little save files wherever you want to go. That's great. It does that amazingly. Now, I didn't get into the co-op experience, but also I'd imagine it's pretty difficult if you were a working parent to coordinate with another player. But overall, playing on an individual server worked out fine. Now, one thing that counts against it that I found, and maybe I haven't dug hard enough into the settings, is that it does not appear that there is a pause in the game. So even if you open up the in-game menu, combat is still happening around you. So if you're engaged with a number of enemies, and then you hear the baby wake up and you got to go and deal with the baby, that could be a problem, because then essentially you're just AFK while the enemies are surrounding you. Now, if you're off somewhere safe, then yeah, you're fine. Or if you're on the open water, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be attacked. However, if you're mid-combat and that happens and there's something that needs your attention, keep that in mind that the pause button doesn't help there. And as I mentioned with the naval aspect of the game, sometimes you have to travel a great distance via boat, and it does eat up quite a bit of time just traveling along the water and getting where you gotta go. Now, once you get there, for the most part, you have fast travel points. They're all over the place in the major ports, and then you can put down the bells and then you'll be good to go. And then you could summon your boat right there at the flick of your wrist. However, it is important to note that getting to those places may take some time. And if you're very short on time, you're going to have to kind of budget it. Also, another aspect that I will give credit to the game is that the quests basically guide your hand exactly where you got to go. Now, I know that it's a survival crafting game and exploration is very important in this game. I also don't like having to guess where everything is. I don't like having to try to figure out if I only have 30 minutes and I have to, guess where all of these quests are. It's probably going to take me more time than 30 minutes, and it's going to be kind of inefficient. So the game does kind of hold your hand in that regard. It does tell you this is exactly where you need to go to do this quest, and this is who you need to talk to. Just follow this, which is great. I love. Some players might not like it. As a working parent, I greatly appreciate that, but I do want to take a step back and say, is the game fun? Now, as again, you may have already put together, I think this game hits it out of the ballpark. It does a phenomenal job of being just fun almost right from the get-go. There is so much going on early on, just even in my little experience here in this game, that I absolutely love. I thoroughly enjoyed my time here. Now, I will say that sometimes the combat feels a little unfair. Being able to get two-tapped is it's kind of a pain. I've died quite a few times. However, it's also kind of rewarding when you understand the gameplay and understand the combat flow. Once you understand the enemy's attack patterns, knowing what you need to do and knowing what your strengths are, the game gets drastically easier in that regard. And then it feels more rewarding that you're able to pull off a perfect parry on, just by pressing the button on time and being able to shoot an enemy and understand how to flow combat so that you don't die or get overwhelmed. It is very, very rewarding in that regard. Something else that is I do have to speak with is that idea of the pirate adventure and being out on the open waters and being, like the captain of your own ship. It really does hit a certain aesthetic, a certain vibe that is very fun. It feels very, very engaging in that regard. Now, granted, there are, again, as I mentioned, there are some times where you're on the boat for like 15 minutes just trying to sail to someplace. But overall, it just feels great playing this game in a number of regards. And this game's only in early access, so this game's definitely going to get bigger and better as it goes through. However, it has knocked it out of the park with the engagement, with the fun, hitting the aesthetic just right. The pirate survival crafting hit the nail on the head, 100%. Now, granted, I will also make mention that I haven't gotten into the building aspect as I talked about before, and I know that that's a lot of what a lot of players very much enjoy is building in that sense, as the aspect of building their own pirate castles or what have you. So I'm sure I'll dip into that at a different point, but that is something that I could see being very fun. But overall, it feels good to play as a pirate. It feels good to explore places and progress and get levels and take down groups of ships. It's phenomenal. Now comes the most important question. If you are a working parent, I would highly recommend you trying out this game of Windrose. It is, in my mind, very much going to be worth your time and worth your investment. If you like survival crafting, if you like anything pirate adventure related, this game marries that so well, so early on, that it is just a damn good time. And I've already sunk so many hours into it, and it doesn't feel like the time is just like ticking by, where it's like, oh, I just gotta get to this point and get here. No, I'm engaged, and it's like, well, damn, there goes an hour. And I've had to remind myself and set timers to stop because I just get so engaged into the game. It's a lot of fun. And again, it hits a lot of the marks that I would make for it to be a successful parent game. Now, it does lose, of course, some points, as I've mentioned, that there isn't really any pause button. Now, I could just be dumb and not know where that setting button is, but if you guys know where it is, tell me in the comment section below. I haven't been able to find it. Maybe one of you guys have seen it, but overall, it does a lot of things right for parents. And again, being able to play on your own world and being able to do your own thing is great. I played it on the baseline difficulty, but there is also a easier difficulty and a hardcore difficulty. Like, there are different options. And again, if you're just looking to kind of like decompress and stress and you don't really want to, freak out about getting two-tapped by a boar, you can set it to the easier difficulty and be able to play and enjoy the game just fine. All right, again, it's a video game, and for the most part, if you're a working parent, you're trying to de-stress at the end of a day. Why play a stressful game? Who does that? Now, I'm only playing through the story, and I'm sure that when you get to the end of it, there's going to be a number of kind of like gameplay loops that you'll have to do. It's like explore this or take this many raiders out, or, you know, something along those lines until they add more content. I do see that happening. However, opening, you know, for only like having 30 minutes to an hour, you're going to have plenty of content to sit down and play through, and plenty of progression to go through in your first playthrough of Windrose. And you're going to be able to constantly just like tack onto it just a little bit further and move the needle just every night, just a little bit, just for that 30 minutes, just for that hour. And it's only going to get bigger from here. So I give it the entire stamp of approval, 9 out of 10. It's damn near perfect for a working parent. That's my rating. And I decided to stick with the CAF Dad scale. It's patent pending. I might make a t-shirt. I have no idea. Now, if I've gone through all this and pirate fantasy doesn't really seem your vibe, you can try out the classic, tried and true, you know, wizard, monsters, and magic vibe in a Working Dad's review of Guild Wars Reforged, one of my favorite games. You can see that video here. Otherwise, stay caffeinated, folks.